What's going on? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique, and we're going to talk about the top fighter at every single age that is represented in the UFC. Now, we're going to start at the absolute youngest, not even going to waste any time. The youngest age represented in the UFC is 19. Now, there's only one fighter at that age, so they're gonna win by default. But I have a feeling that even if there was a couple competitors there, Raul Rosas Jr. would still be the number one fighter at 19. He is 10-1. He's coming off a victory at Noche UFC, and he's on his way up. He is a winner from a Dana White Contender Series previously, and credit to the UFC, they're not forcing him or rushing him. They're bringing him along slow. At this pace, you would say maybe he's a contender by the time he's 23, 24 years old, which I think is good for him and is good for the UFC in the future, especially as they continue to try to build their Mexican fight fan base. So we'll see how that works out. Now, as far as age 20 and 21, there are no fighters currently on the UFC roster that are 20 or 21. So we skip right to 22, and we have Yasmin Lucindo, who is now 17-5. She's coming off a victory at UFC 307. This young Brazilian fighter is dynamic. The crazy thing is she's already into the top 15, going to be pretty much rising even further, but she's already just, got so much momentum at this point. She is pretty complete as it comes to striking as well as grappling. But the most exciting thing I think about her is that she's still getting better, yet she's getting big time victories over people like Marina Rodriguez, who was ranked number 6. Now, at the time that I'm recording this video, the newest ratings hadn't come out. So I'm assuming that Lucindo is going to be up to number 6 by the time you probably see this. So we're talking about somebody who's already in the top 6, 7 in her division, and she's only 22 years old. Now, there's a couple people. You got Joshua Van, who I kind of put her over, and I think that we were validated by doing that because of the victory she just got over Marina Rodriguez at UFC 307. Now we're going to move on to 23. The age 23, we don't have a lot of killers right now, but Cameron Simon is a super impressive young fighter. Now, he did just run into an absolute buzzsaw, losing to Peyton Talbot, and then right before that, he lost to Christian Rodriguez. So while I mentioned that Raul Rosas was brought along pretty slowly, that wasn't the case with Simon. He was getting straight killers right there in his age bracket, and he kind of faltered. But I would still say he's still the top guy at 23 years of age. There's not a lot of other guys who I would say, or girls who I would say would be in his category. So he's still number 1 in his age group. I'm sure he wants more than that. At 24, we might be talking about a future champion. Tatsuro Taira, 16-0. This dude is nasty. He is nasty. He is the top Japanese star in the UFC. That's another community that the promotion is trying to build out. I'm saying undefeated dude. I mean, we're talking about a 24-year-old who is already ranked number 5 at flyweight. He is bringing it. Now, he has a crazy big fight actually coming up on Saturday when he takes on Brandon Royval, who is the number 1 contender. So if Taira wins that fight, you got to think he's next in line to get the championship opportunity in the UFC's flyweight division. So this dude is bringing it, and he is the number 1 24-year-old in the UFC. Let's talk about 25. This one was kind of competitive, I'm going to tell you. I went with Erin Blanchfield. She's 12-2. So I pretty much put her over the undefeated Michael Morales, because as good as that fighter is, as good as he looks, he still, in my opinion, has to beat a few more people. Now, Daniel Zellhuber is awesome. He lost a really, really good fight at Noche UFC, but I still think he's awesome. He's also that same age. But when you look at the strength of schedule that Erin Blanchfield has faced, I would have to say she's the best fighter of her age. So we're going to go with her at 25. Let's talk about 26 years old. Now we're starting to get into some real, outside of Taira, we're starting to get into some real deal championship contenders. Ian Machado Gary. Now, you don't gotta like him, which I'm gonna say a lot of people kind of don't feel great about Ian Machado Gary, but he's 15-0. And he is the same age as Peyton Talbot. Now, if it were not for Ian Machado Gary, I'd probably go with Peyton Talbot here. But I'm trying to tell you, man, Gary, I mean, especially with him adding, studying more grappling, getting better in that area, because it was perceived that that would be where his weakness is. Starting to eliminate that being a weakness. He's currently number 7 at welterweight. His last 3 wins over Michael Venom Page, Jeff Neal, and Neil Magny. Getting more and more impressive. He's been chasing fights with Kobe Covington. He's talked about Shavkat Rakhmonov. That's scary. And Kamaru Usman. So we'll see. I think that's probably going to be one of those 3 guys might be his next fight. So we're going to learn even more about Gary at that point. Number 27, one of the best fighters in the world. The first world champion currently on this list. So the youngest world champion in the UFC is this guy, Ilia Topuria, 15-0. I really don't. I mean, there's another really good 27-year-old. We got Arman Sarukian. He's not a champion yet, even though he could be by January when he's expected to take on Islam Makhachev. But right now, Topuria, undefeated, just destroyed Volkanovski to win the title. Now, by the time you watch this, Topuria might already be fighting Max Holloway. That fight's coming up later on this month, but he is unquestionably. I don't even have to spend a lot of time explaining why Topuria's the number 1 27-year-old. Let's talk about 28, Jack Della Maddalena. Now, this one, yeah, this one's tough because I went with Jack over Umar Nurmagomedov. You can't get caught up in the Nurmagomedov. You gotta judge them all separately. And sometimes I think even the UFC and the rankings and the media are kind of falling into that. As good a fighter as Umar is. Now, do I think that Umar's a better fighter maybe than Jack? Yeah, maybe. But we got to look at this resume, right? And Davis Wheatley he's criticized Nurmagomedov's resume, saying that he doesn't really even think he deserves to be next for a title shot. So that's neither here nor there. Jack, man, he's beaten Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, and Randy Brown. I got to go with Jack as the number 1 28-year-old in the UFC. 29, we mentioned them already. I think he might be the next welterweight champion of the world, and it's Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's 18-0, and the dude's got finishes in all 18 fights. He is an absolute dog, right? This is not a popularity contest. Yes, I know that Sean O'Malley is 28 years old, but if you ask me right now, who was a better fighter between Rakhmonov and Sean O'Malley, I'm taking Rakhmonov every day of the week. I'm just telling you, even if O'Malley had beaten Davis Wheatley, I still might probably say that Rakhmonov is the best fighter at his age. Best 29-year-old in the sport is Rakhmonov. Let's go with at age 30. Dricus du Plessis, 22-2. Just think about it. Like, you might not believe that he beat Sean Strickland. I actually kind of scored the fight for Strickland myself, but it was really super close. But he wins the title beating Sean Strickland. He just finished Israel Adesanya. Now, you may have some question about whether or not Adesanya is even Adesanya anymore, but he also stopped Robert Whittaker. Yeah, it's getting like that, right? So I give him the edge over Khamzat Chimaev because the best ability is availability. And I think we all know that Khamzat's just, a lot of times he's not available. I also give him the slight edge over Movsar Evloev because I think Evloev deserves a mention, of course, but he still has to beat a few more top competition guys before I would put him over the reigning UFC middleweight champion. So at age 30, we got Dricus du Plessis. At 31, the interim heavyweight champion, Tom Aspinall. He's 15-3. He just avenged the only loss he had in the UFC, which we all kind of thought it was a freakish loss, and he proved it by destroying Curtis Blaydes in the first round of their rematch. It's him. I mean, there's not even a lot of other 31-year-olds that you can even strongly consider in the UFC over him. Now, some people believe that Aspinall is the best heavyweight in the world. We'll find that out at some point, I guess, because John Jones is going to fight Stipe Miocic at UFC 309. The winner of that is supposed to take on Aspinall unless they both retire, which is a possibility, and then which Aspinall would get elevated to the undisputed champion. I don't think he wants to win it that way, but that's neither here nor there. He is the best 31-year-old in the UFC. 32, arguably the pound for pound. Well, don't say this to Dana White, but arguably the pound for pound best mixed martial artist in the world, Islam Makhachev. He's 26-1. If I got to explain to you why Islam Makhachev is the best 32-year-old in MMA, you are probably watching the wrong video. So I'm going to just move on to 33. 33, Merab Dvalishvili. He just won the title. He's 18-4. But beyond just winning the title, the win streak that Merab is on just overall is freaking bananas. He's the reigning UFC bantamweight champion, which is probably good enough for me to just put him here anyway. But I did have to tell you, I had to edge him over Leon Edwards based on recency. Now, Leon Edwards had a fantastic streak of his own that just got broken against Bilal Muhammad. But most recently, who looked the best? I got to go with Merab. So, and of course, Sean Strickland deserves to get mentioned here, but I still got to go with the guy that's the current champion. 34 years old, he is your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. Charles Oliveira. He's 34-10. Now, this one was a little tough, though, right? Because Alexander Pantoja is here. And that's not just an open and shut kind of case here. Pantoja is one of the most, I think, underrated fighters in the world. Definitely one of the more underrated champions. He might be the most underrated champion. So this, very rarely do I put a non-champion over a champion on this list. So you're gonna kind of see this. This is very rarely I do it, but this is a special situation because Oliveira is a future Hall of Famer, and Pantoja might be too. But Oliveira is a special kind of fighter, and I think we saw in his last fight against Sarukian that the tank's not empty yet. He's going to fight Michael Chandler at UFC 309. I think he's going to destroy him. I could be wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen. And so we'll see what happens with him from there. But I have him as the number one 34-year-old. 35. I'm going to be honest with you. I literally cover combat sports for part of my living. I have covered combat sports for over a decade and a half. I did not know that Weili was 35. For some reason, that just kind of shocked me. I was like, I knew she was like in her 30s, but I didn't realize she was 35. I don't want to sound like Kevin Hart talking to Don Cheadle. Damn, I don't want to do that. But she's 35, but she's 25-3, and she is the best 35-year-old in the sport. Now, I might have kind of just thrown a shot at her for being 35, but just wait till you listen and hear the 35-year-olds that I put her over. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and Alexander Volkanovski. Well, she is a current champion. She has dominated pretty much the strawweight division, with the exception of Rose Namajunas, who she just could not beat for some reason. Not for some reason. Rose is a dog, so that's part of the reason why. But we got to go with recency, and I think that all three of those guys are still pretty good fighters, or not pretty good fighters, really good fighters. But they're all coming off losses. All three of them are coming off losses. So I'm going to go with Weili because, and now remember, this is not a list of who's had like the greatest careers. This is who's the best right now at this age, right? That's why we're talking about the ages, right? So let's move on. 36, Valentina Shevchenko, 24-4-1, just got her title back from Alexa Grasso and Noche UFC. This age 36 group is nasty too. We got Bilal Muhammad, we got Davison Figueiredo, we got Conor McGregor, we got Kobe Covington. Now it was close with Bilal Muhammad and even Figueiredo. Bilal's a current champion. He's on a crazy streak, but I think Shevchenko's still more dominant. And that one was close though, because Bilal, he said we got to remember the name, but I think we got to start putting some respect on his name. And I am doing that. But I still think we also got to maintain respect on Shevchenko's name. I think she's still the best 36-year-old in the UFC. 37, step back. Dana White would be happy. John Jones is the best 37-year-old in the UFC. Now, at the time that I kind of put this together, him and Alex Pereira are like the exact same age. Alex Pereira just beat the brakes off of Khalil Roundtree in one of the most gutsy performances on both guys' sides. I mean, we talking, a lot of people giving a lot of credit to Khalil Roundtree for having such a big heart and taking a beating. But Pereira took a couple shots in there too, and then ultimately, man, he just started taking over. But John Jones, until I see different, and I don't want to sound like the Black Dana White here. That's not what I'm doing. But until I see different, and he's still active, I have never seen a better fighter than John Jones. Now, if John Jones goes out here against Stipe Miocic and wins and doesn't look good or loses, then Alex Pereira is the best of their age, and I would change it. But as of right now, bones. At 38, I think he was robbed in Salt Lake City. Jose Aldo, he's now 32-9. I thought that he beat Mario Bautista. I feel like there is some issue with the fact that he laid on the fence and let Bautista just lay against him and kind of stall. But I don't think you should ever win a round for stalling. You got to do some damage. That didn't happen. I think Aldo deserved to win that fight. Dana White said he thought he deserved to win it as well. I think that was kind of crazy. I put Aldo over Michael Chandler because Michael Chandler's only legit win in the UFC, y'all. Let's just be real about it. Came over Dan Hooker. Okay, he's 2-3 in the UFC. So I can't sit here and, like, I'm gonna be honest with you right now. If they were in the same weight class and Jose Aldo fought Michael Chandler, I think Jose Aldo would win. And they're close enough in weight where I can even say that. So based on that right there, Jose Aldo's the best 38-year-old in the UFC. Let's go to 39. Yeah, okay, it's the pickings are starting to get a little slim. And this is not meant as an insult to Josh Emmett. He is the number one 39-year-old, 19-4. Everybody knows Josh Emmett has a rocket ship for a right hand. The knockout win that he scored over Bryce Mitchell was one of the scariest knockouts. I'm talking about that sucker was Edson Barbosa, Terry Edom level scary. It was like I was at press row when Valentina Shevchenko knocked out Jessica Ai with a head kick. It sounded like somebody hit a stack of meat with a leather belt. It was like it was like that. This knockout, I think, of Bryce Mitchell was even nasty. So I'm gonna give him the nod over Derek Lewis, who I think is a cool presence, but there's a lot of holes in that game. I think we all know that. But we just love him anyway because of the whole personality thing, and he hits like a truck. But Josh Emmett's a fantastic wrestler, fantastic overall athlete, and he does have that punch. So I think he's the best 38-year-old. Did I say 38? I meant 39. 40-year-old Jared Cannonier. 40 is 40, but Jared Cannonier is still a dog, y'all. It's not a lot of great 40-year-olds, obviously, in the UFC, but at 40 on the nose, I think he's still the best. It's not a lot of them. Like I said, he's coming off losses to Kyle Barajo as well as Nasruddin Imavov, and he fought hard in both of those fights. I think that he is at the end of his rope in terms of being a legitimate title contender in middleweight, but for what it's worth, I still think he's the best 40-year-old in the UFC. 41, Jan Blachowicz. Now, I know we're talking a lot about 40. I'm not sure that Jan Blachowicz is not still the best light heavyweight in the world. Like, he has been injured for a while. Of every light heavyweight who has fought Pereira, he is the only one to really, really be competitive before Khalil Roundtree scored a knockdown at UFC 307. But Blachowicz, I mean, come on, y'all. This dude he's real deal. He's just been injured. And also, you got to remember, he also fought Magomed Ankalaev to a draw. So he has fought the two best light heavyweights in the world and more than held his own. He is the number one 41-year-old in the UFC. And I give him that edge even over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who just got knocked out by Joaquin Buckley at UFC 307. 42. And this is the oldest age in the UFC. So there's only two of them. And Stipe Miocic is the number one 42-year-old. The other 42-year-old is Holly Holm. And it hasn't looked great for Holly lately, right? Stipe hasn't fought in 4 years. So we don't even know what Stipe we're going to get at UFC 309. People keep saying that about John Jones, but I think we got just as much to kind of consider with Stipe. But Stipe's, at this point, the greatest heavyweight of all time. And Holly Holmes is an absolute trailblazer, super important to the UFC women's division and the UFC overall. But the best 42-year-old in the UFC is Stipe Miocic. That's all I got for you. I hope you sat through this whole video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribe is very important. We are trying to get to 1,000 subs. If you do this YouTube thing, you know what I mean. I would appreciate anybody's support. As always, peace.